What if you discovered the Bible is fundamentally incomplete and is missing one of its most essential books? The Book of Jasher has been intentionally and systematically erased from the official canon throughout history. Within its pages lie forbidden ancient accounts of the colossal giants that once roamed across the earth. The hidden reality of the Nephilim and the antediluvian world has long been concealed from our view. We now excavate those buried passages to expose the most astounding revelations of our ancient past. What you are about to learn will completely reshape everything you believed about the Holy Scriptures. Mainstream narratives consistently bypass texts like Jasher for reasons that are shadowy and unclear. A buried history exists, running alongside the sacred writings that millions around the world revere. The Book of Jasher predates much of biblical tradition, yet it is cited and almost never truly read. Questions about deliberate suppression arise immediately when examining why it was left out of canon. What led religious powers to conclude that this ancient knowledge posed a grave threat to the people? Jasher presents a rich and entirely singular account of the Nephilim true origins that transcends Genesis. Its words reveal precisely how the sons of God descended upon earth to pollute the bloodline of humanity. This was not merely a spiritual encounter, but a physical corruption that spawned horrors across the land. The reign of the giants in the antediluvian age was vastly broader and more brutal than commonly assumed. Jasher recounts how those hybrid creatures imposed a reign of absolute and unrelenting terror on men. Their dominion extended beyond physical might, for they also wielded forbidden and advanced arcane wisdom. The deviation of the giants from divine order, both spiritual and technological, triggered global judgment. These beings transmitted to humanity the arts of warfare, dark sorcery, and the corruption of creation. Yet, the mainstream historical account deliberately buries these revelations beneath layers of mythology. Studying Jasher, we uncover that the corruption of the human genome was the primary goal of fallen angels. The Great Flood was not simply divine retribution for sin, but a targeted cleansing of tainted bloodlines. A far greater enigma then emerges, one that overturns the accepted timeline that modern scholars defend. Jasher documents the astonishing continuation of certain giant bloodlines well beyond the Great Flood event. This directly challenges the widespread assumption that the flood erased every last trace of the Nephilim. The connections between Jasher and figures such as Nimrod reveal a deeper layer of post-flood significance. Nimrod was far more than a defiant ruler. He was a man who sought to reclaim the power of the ancient gods. Jasher traces the dynastic genealogies linking hybrid bloodlines to the earliest post-flood civilizations. The portrait of Og of Bashan, drawn in Jasher, contains striking detail entirely absent from the canonical text. According to Jasher, Og survived by gripping the outer edge of the ark, transforming our concept of mercy. Such narratives imply that the corrupted serpent seed managed to endure through the global catastrophe. The shadow of the giants continued to fall over human civilizations long after the floodwaters had receded. Goliath was no random mutation, but a direct heir of an ancient bloodline of gigantic hybrid warriors. Through the pages of Jasher, we can follow that lineage and understand its devastating role in Israel wars. The towering megalithic monuments that confound modern archaeologists finally find answers within these pages. Only creatures possessing superhuman power and now lost technical knowledge could have erected such stones. Jasher illuminates ancient physical discoveries that contemporary science chooses to dismiss or misclassify. The prevailing historical narrative begins to collapse the moment we apply the evidence preserved in Jasher. We stand before a frontal challenge to everything academia has proclaimed about biblical and human origins. Every assumption we inherited about the roots of civilization and organized religion must be reconsidered. A new generation of scholars is approaching this long-scorned text with fresh eyes and serious attention. The authenticity debate surrounding Jasher is fierce, yet the internal consistency of its narratives holds. Jasher bridges the narrative silences of Genesis, delivering a complete and deeply unsettling portrait. It transports us to an era when the boundary separating the mortal from the divine was perilously thin. The giants were not simply massive in body, but equally dominant in intellect and absolute in their malice. They plundered the divine mysteries to dominate the earth and seat themselves as immortal rulers over men. The burial of this text may represent the most significant theological concealment of the last 2 millennia. In silencing Jasher, the full dimensions of the spiritual conflict humanity faces were also buried from view. Our true battle is not with physical enemies alone, but with ancient principalities of enormous age and power. Jasher documents grotesque genetic crossings between species that constituted a deep offense to the Creator. Even the natural world was infected, with the fundamental biological order of plants and animals distorted. The text reveals how the giants consumed every harvest and resource that human beings labored to produce. Once provisions ran out, these voracious entities turned their predatory hunger directly upon human beings. The sheer dread of existing beneath the oppressive rule of the Nephilim is barely hinted at in the canon. Jasher conveys that horror with raw and visceral clarity that fully explains the necessity of the flood. The divine decree to destroy all living flesh becomes entirely rational when measured against such atrocities. Yet, a lingering puzzle remains concerning how the forbidden knowledge of the Watchers outlasted the deluge. Jasher proposes that key records and esoteric technologies were encoded and sealed within pillars of stone. This accounts for the dramatic and otherwise inexplicable rise of complex societies in Sumer and ancient Egypt. The legacy of the fallen ones did not vanish with the waters, but quietly migrated into secretive hands. The ancient mystery schools may have served as clandestine custodians of this deeply forbidden knowledge. Jasher functions as a master cipher, decoding the deepest and most enduring enigmas of our ancient world. It reveals that the entire arc of human history is a contest between uncorrupted and corrupted bloodlines. The ancient royal fixation on genealogical purity assumes a far darker and more literal dimension here. Those dynasties were driven to preserve within themselves the traits of the pre-flood divine rulers. Jasher names specific places and figures that modern archaeological expeditions are only now rediscovering. Every excavation confirming the text accuracy is a direct blow to the academic denial of the supernatural. The undeniable existence of giants is the massive unspoken reality that secular historiography ignores. Yet when ancient texts are read as a whole, they converge into a single and unmistakable declaration of truth. Both Joshua and the books of Samuel cite the Book of Jasher, lending it undeniable historical legitimacy. On what grounds can a text referenced by the prophets themselves be dismissed as fiction or irrelevance? That contradiction alone opens a vast and troubling set of questions for any serious student of theology. Recovering Jasher means recovering the critical missing piece that gives coherence to ancient world history. We can finally comprehend why the Creator ordered the complete elimination of specific Canaanite peoples. It was not an act of divine cruelty, but a calculated measure to halt the further spread of tainted lineages. Jasher makes clear that Canaanite tribes carried within them the genetic residue of the surviving giant clans. The campaigns of Joshua were, in truth, a deliberate campaign against hybrids to protect the messianic lineage. Stripped of this framework, the Old Testament reads as an arbitrary and inexplicably violent historical record. With Jasher restored, it becomes a coherent saga of humanity's survival against an organized biological threat. The text also probes the inner world of the Nephilim, their boundless pride and their contempt for human life. They considered themselves deathless lords of creation until the deep waters of divine wrath consumed them. Yet, malevolence finds ways to persist, and the account of the Tower of Babel gains extraordinary depth and clarity from the details Jasher contributes. Nimrod did not reach toward the heavens with weapons, but with ancestral technology of catastrophic potential. The fracturing of human language served as an essential divine intervention to prevent another total collapse. Jasher urges us to interpret ancient ruins not as graves, but as monuments to a catastrophically lost power. The Baalbek megaliths and the pyramids stand as mute but overwhelming testimony to the truth of these records. Tasks that would be inconceivable for primitive humans were straightforward for the offspring of divine beings. Our blindness to this planetary evidence is the direct consequence of choosing to suppress the Book of Jasher. The story of the giants is not children mythology, but the deliberately erased true history of our planet. Every human culture preserves parallel legends that Jasher alone weaves into a single coherent narrative. From the Titans of Greece to the Rakshasas of India, every tradition converges on the same ancient reality. Jasher stands as the unifying thread connecting global mythological memory with the core of biblical truth. It compels us to demand answers about what other suppressed texts remain locked in the Vatican's secret archives. How much of what we call history has been surgically edited to maintain a population in managed ignorance? Independent academic inquiry is now dismantling the barriers that sealed this ancient book for centuries. We now possess translations that prior generations were never permitted to access, even in the most covert ways. This is an era of unveiling, in which truths long buried are surfacing for all humanity to examine openly. Yet, access to knowledge demands a corresponding responsibility to separate genuine truth from deliberate lies. Jasher is not without limitations, but it remains an irreplaceable lens for viewing the ancient world clearly. Through its pages, the Patriarchs emerge as figures navigating a reality far more perilous and layered than known. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob inhabited a world where giant beings still represented a palpable and deadly menace. The coalition wars described in Genesis 14 are best interpreted as struggles for dominance among Nephilim lords. The bravery of the Patriarchs takes on extraordinary weight once we grasp the true nature of their adversaries. These men were far more than wandering herdsmen. They were frontline warriors in a spiritually occupied world. Jasher elevates the ancient Hebrews by making visible the magnitude and danger of the enemies they confronted. It further cautions that the conditions that birthed those dark ages are quite capable of returning once more. The prophetic parallel between the age of Noah and the final era was placed in Scripture for serious reason. Reading Noah's world through the lens of Jasher is indispensable for comprehending the era we now inhabit. Genetic engineering and the hybridization of species have become defining frontiers of contemporary science. Are we now unlocking the very same forbidden gates that earlier civilizations flung open to their own ruin? Jasher serves as a dark reflective surface in which the trajectory of our own civilization is made visible. The ancient warnings reverberate with genuinely terrifying resonance against our modern technological backdrop. The current obsession with transcending human biology is a direct echo of the Nephilim hunger to become divine. Jasher is not merely a history lesson, but a profound examination of human nature and its most dangerous impulses. Its suppression persisted far too long, but the digital age has torn down the gatekeeping of forbidden material. You now hold the ability to read, compare sources, and form your own independent conclusions about hidden history. Reject the sanctioned narrative that exists solely to preserve a manufactured and comfortable collective ignorance. The giants inscribed their existence on this planet in stone and bone, leaving evidence that no one can erase. Jasher is the textual companion to those physical remains, giving voice and context to what archaeology finds. Countless museums reportedly conceal giant skeletal remains in their storage vaults, far from public scrutiny. The organized silence surrounding this evidence reaches deep into both religious and secular scientific bodies. Shattering that silence demands intellectual courage and a mind truly prepared to confront the extraordinary. Jasher is an instrument designed for those who refuse to accept a diminished and falsified version of history. It demands that we fundamentally recalibrate our comprehension of the divine, the cosmos, and human purpose. It discloses that our planet has been the arena for cosmic conflicts that dwarf ordinary human imagination. Angels, fallen beings, and giants are not symbolic constructs, but genuine agents in our recorded history. The actual nature of reality is vastly stranger and more gripping than anything produced by the film industry. Ultimately, Jasher reawakens our capacity for awe before the staggering complexity of what the Creator made. It reminds humanity that immense unsolved mysteries still lie buried beneath the sands of forgotten deserts. Each passage of this recovered book is another fragment restoring the great shattered mosaic of divine truth. Reluctance to embrace these texts stems from the terror of being forced to fundamentally rewrite human history. Truth, however, fears no examination. It is only falsehood that must be shielded behind walls of censorship. If Scripture is divinely inspired, then Jasher is the living historical framework needed to interpret it fully. To dismiss Jasher is to watch the unfolding story of humanity with both eyes deliberately and stubbornly shut. The call is to investigate, to challenge assumptions, and to refuse every dogma unsupported by real evidence. The giants walked here, dominated, collapsed, and left behind a legacy whose echoes still reverberate today. Their genetic line may have faded, yet their cultural and spiritual imprint on our civilization endures fully. Recognizing their existence is the foundational step toward liberating ourselves from the prison of false history. Jasher has risen from total obscurity to confront a generation desperately searching for meaning and real truth. It is not accidental that this suppressed knowledge is emerging at precisely this pivotal moment in human time. A divine intentionality governs the moment when these long-sealed and ancient revelations begin breaking free. Our response to this information will ultimately shape the lens through which we perceive the unfolding future. History moves in recurring cycles, and the resonances of what came before are growing louder with every year. Heeding those ancient resonances is the only way to avoid repeating the catastrophic errors of Noah's generation. Intellectual pride remains the primary obstacle standing between humanity and the recovery of genuine lost truth. Jasher demands our humility while simultaneously requiring our most rigorously critical and discerning intellect. What emerges from its pages will unsettle you deeply, yet genuine truth has never promised to be comfortable. This text beckons us to step past familiar boundaries and peer into the depths of a very ancient and dark abyss. Within that primordial darkness, we encounter the fundamental keys to understanding who we truly are as a species. We descend from survivors of a cosmic conflict that erupted long before our individual births into this world. Jasher preserves the full chronicle of that primal war waged for ultimate control and dominion over the earth. As this examination concludes, it is unmistakable that official history conceals by far the greater part of reality. Beneath what we have been shown lies an immense reservoir of suppressed truth awaiting those willing to seek it. The documented existence of giants and the ancient book that records them can no longer be rationally dismissed. A door has been opened to a mystery that will permanently alter the way you understand the entire ancient world. Subscribe now to keep uncovering the buried secrets that the architects of official history have tried to destroy.